The rain beat against the asphalt as if trying to erase footprints, and yet a silhouette appeared at the end of the street, trembling under the cold light of the lamppost. It wasn't a person. She was a soaked dog, with a big belly, sunken eyes, and a silent plea stuck in her throat. She didn't run, she didn't bark, she didn't make a scene. She just moved forward slowly, like someone choosing each step with what little breath she had left. When she stopped in front of the hospital awning, she lowered her head and looked inside, searching for a family whose name she didn't even know. And for a second, the silence seemed more dangerous than the storm. The suburban hospital woke up slowly that grey morning, with the smell of weak coffee mingling with the disinfectant in the hallway. Laura, an experienced nurse, adjusted her mask while trying to hide the exhaustion she had carried for months. The routine was predictable, measuring vital signs, calming families, pushing stretchers. Near the entrance, Achilled, she held her mother's hand, watching the rain fall as if counting drops to forget her fear. It was then that Laura noticed a strange silence outside, a rare interval between thunderclaps. Something seemed to be asking for attention without making a sound, like a heart beating out of rhythm. The dog reappeared at the automatic door, its fur plastered to its body, breathing shallowly, protecting its belly with its own weight. It was a puppy ordinary, without a collar, without a name. But she had a posture of loyalty that came through the glass. Laura felt a tightness in her chest, an old memory of when she had lost someone for arriving too late. Child, she pointed carefully, as if asking permission to feel. Hope. No one rushed to help. There were no sirens, no drama. Just one, silence heavy, and a look that pleaded trust without demanding anything in return. If you feel stories like this that speak of love, protection, and silent choices like this video, activate the bell and follow the page. This helps true stories find new families. Laura took a deep breath and opened the door a little, keeping her distance. The dog didn't advance. She just raised her eyes and waited, as if she knew that haste could scare her away. The rain ran down the floor, forming small islands of light. Achilled, he watched, motionless. Something about that waiting seemed bigger than a simple rescue. It seemed like a request to trust your instincts. Inside, the routine continued, but outside, time moved at a different pace. The dog adjusted its trembling paws and looked towards the parking lot, then at Laura, as if trying to show her an invisible path. There were no barks, only short breaths and a strange, almost fixed focus. Protector, a child, she felt like crying without knowing why. No one had yet noticed the detail under the rain, that discreet sign that would change everything. The hospital continued to function. The mystery did not. The dog remained motionless for long seconds, as if sniffing something that wasn't coming from the ground, but from the air. Laura noticed its damp nose moving slowly, drawing in the metallic smell of rain mixed with diesel from cars. Silence. It seemed to thicken. Egg-heeled, she felt a chill and squeezed her mother's fingers. There was nothing danger visible, only a growing discomfort. The dog shifted her weight, protected her belly, and turned her gaze back inside the hospital. Fixed, insistent. It wasn't fear. It was urgency, and yet no one understood what she was trying to say. Laura took a step forward, keeping her voice calm, as she did with frightened patience. The dog responded with a slight retreat, and then advanced half a step, a restrained, respectful gesture. Puppy. She wasn't asking for food. She wasn't seeking shelter. She was seeking the right attention. Child, he noticed something strange in the dog's breathing rhythm, too shallow for someone who was just waiting. His gaze shifted between Laura and the side aisle of the parking lot. A wordless request. One instinct which didn't fit with abandonment. Right there at that moment, a doubt began to take root that wouldn't be easily silenced. The rain lessened, but the tension increased. One employee hurried past, noticing nothing. Another looked away. The dog tilted its head, sniffed again, and touched the ground with its paw as if marking a point. Laura sensed the heart accelerate. It was no coincidence. Achilled, she swallowed hard, realizing something was wrong, though she couldn't explain it. The dog protected her belly with her body and let out a low sigh, almost a stifled whimper. There was no drama. There was loyalty in silence, waiting for someone to choose to trust. Laura decided to follow the animal's gaze. The side corridor was empty, lights flickering, and there was a smell of oil and stagnant water. The dog wouldn't move without Laura's attention, as if it needed human presence to continue. This attentiveness caught her attention. It wasn't a rescue impulsive, it was an invitation. Achilled, he took a step back from the nurse, sensing that this was not a time to run. Puppy. She was breathing heavily, but maintained a firm, protective posture, like a mother who endures a little longer for the one who is yet to come. When Laura hesitated, the dog repeated the gesture, paw on the ground, fixed gaze, shallow breathing. A pattern, a warning. The air seemed heavy, and Thessalon's, it became almost deafening. Achilled, he noticed a strange glint in the animal's eyes, not fear, but trust, as if to say, "Look with me." Laura remembered how many times ignoring small signs had cost her dearly at the hospital. There was no proof, only a feeling. Still, something inside her told her that that dog wasn't there by chance, nor just for her. Laura called a colleague in a low voice. No one saw any danger. Some thought it was an exaggeration. The dog remained firm, refusing to lie down, even though she was tired. Love, it wasn't sweet there. It was tough. Child, he observed every movement, learning without knowing it. The side corridor remained empty, but the destination, it seemed to breathe there, invisible. The dog turned its snout once more to the same spot, insistently. Doubt grew. What if ignoring it was the real risk? The clock ticked forward. A decision had to be made. The dog finally moved, but not into the hospital. She took 2 slow steps toward the side corridor and stopped, looking back to confirm that Laura was following her. It was a clear, almost didactic gesture. Puppy. It wasn't pulling, it wasn't running, it was just guiding. Achilled. She felt her heart pound, realizing this was no joke. The wet ground reflected flickering light, and the metallic smell seemed stronger there. The dog breathed heavily, protecting her belly, but remained focused. Something invisible awaited on that path. Laura walked slowly, keeping her distance, feeling her own instincts awaken. The dog stopped every few steps, waiting as if regulating its pace so as not to frighten her. This carefulness revealed loyalty and love, not despair. Achilled, she gripped the nurse's sleeve tightly, her eyes alert. There were no screams, just assailant full of anticipation. When they approached an isolated parking spot, the dog fixed its gaze on the ground, sniffing intently. The air grew heavy. Something was wrong there, even though no one could pinpoint what. The dog began to lightly scratch the wet asphalt, not to dig, but to indicate something. Laura noticed a dark stain mixed with the rainwater, almost imperceptible. Child. He felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't visible blood, but something was out of place. Puppy. She let out a short, tired breath and again shielded her belly with her body. That gesture changed everything. She wasn't thinking only of herself. There was a danger, a silence that encompassed more than one life. Laura called for help on the radio, in a low voice, without alarm. Some colleagues looked doubtful. The dog didn't react to the footsteps around her, remaining focused. Like a canine police dog, I would do this upon identifying something critical. Achilled, he noticed that the adults were starting to pay attention. The dog's fixed gaze seemed to pierce the floor, as if she could see beyond. The rain returned lightly, and the sound of the drops marked the time. The feeling was clear. This was not a common abandonment, but a calculated plea for help, rescue. When a security guard approached, the dog raised its head and stared firmly without aggression, a silent warning. Laura felt a shiver. That posture wasn't one of defense, it was of protection. A child, she noticed that the atmosphere had changed. No one was smiling or ignoring her anymore. The dog sniffed again and pointed to the same spot once more. Repetition eliminated coincidences. The destination, it seemed to insist through that tired body, asking for only one thing, attention before it was too late. Laura knelt down carefully, observing the ground and her surroundings more closely. The detail that no one had noticed began to reveal itself there, too small for hasty eyes. The dog relaxed slightly upon seeing the focused attention, as if she had accomplished part of her mission. Child, she held her breath. There was still no answer, only growing tension. Thessalence. Now it wasn't empty, it was pure expectation. Something was about to be discovered, and the confidence in that puppy it would change the course of all the lives involved. The security guard crouched beside Laura, observing the indicated spot, but shook his head in denial. To him, there was nothing but rain, oil, and old tire tracks. Some employees murmured that the dog must be disoriented by the pregnancy, perhaps in pain. Child, she heard that, and felt a strange unease, as if they were saying something unfair. The dog remained still, breathing shallowly, eyes alert, ignoring the voices. Silence. It weighed on her again. For the first time, Laura felt afraid that she might be projecting feelings where perhaps there was only coincidence. A doctor rushed past, complaining about the delay, and someone suggested calling animal control. The word sounded too harsh at that moment. Laura looked at the dog and realized how exhausted she was, but still she didn't give up. The puppy, she did not back down, she did not give in. A loyalty, there, it seemed larger than his own body, child. She felt her eyes welling up with tears without understanding why. If everyone else was wrong, why did that look convey so much emotion? Trust. And if everyone was right, why did the heart insist on saying otherwise? Laura tried to organize her thoughts as she did in emergencies. Facts, signs, decisions. The fact was simple. A pregnant dog, alone, wet. The sign was confusing, insistence on a specific spot. The decision, however, weighed heavily. If she was wrong, it would be just another distraction in a crowded shift. If she was right, ignoring it could cost lives. The dog sensed the hesitation and let out a low, almost imperceptible sound, not of pain, but of warning. Child, he realized that the sound wasn't asking for help. It was asking for action. Some colleagues began to lose patience. She just wants attention, they said. Another commented that animals smell strange odors all the time. Doubt permeated the atmosphere. Laura sensed the heart to squeeze. How many times in life have small signs been dismissed because they seemed inconvenient? The dog looked at Laura again, fixed, intense, as if recognizing in her the last chance. There was no aggression, only love and urgency. Thessalence, it seemed that an invisible, fragile but real agreement had formed between the two. Laura took a deep breath and made a simple but risky decision. She asked for a few minutes, just that. Not to prove anything, but to get a better look. The dog relaxed slightly, as if she understood. Child, he felt a strange relief. The investigation would begin there, without certainty, without applause, only with attention. The detail was still hidden, too small for distracted eyes. But now there was someone willing to look for it, and at that moment, to trust in that person. Puppy, it seemed less dangerous than ignoring it. Laura asked for a flashlight and approached the indicated spot, ignoring the impatient glances. The light swept across the wet asphalt, revealing only broken reflections. Still, the dog remained focused, sniffing the same place, insistently, like a canine police dog when it recognizes an invisible pattern. Achilled, he watched in silence, sensing that something was about to happen. Thesilence. It was no longer empty, it was restrained expectation. Laura noticed a tiny detail, an irregular mark underwater, almost erased. Too small to justify so much effort, too big to ignore. A colleague commented that it could just be old residue, nothing current. The doubt resurfaced. Laura felt the weight of the decision growing. The dog was breathing shallowly, protecting its belly, but didn't move away. The love there, it wasn't sentimental. It was functional, focused, child. She noticed that the adults were talking, but no one was really listening. The dog tilted her head, sniffed again, and touched the ground with her paw, repeating the gesture. The repetition transformed hypothesis into clue. Trust it was beginning to form, still fragile but alive. Laura asked them to move the nearby cars. There was resistance, complaints. Time seemed to slip away along with the rain. The dog followed every movement, eyes attentive, posture firm. When a car was moved, the smell changed, stronger, metallic, fresh. Laura smelled it. Heart accelerate. Achilled, he put his hand to his mouth without knowing why. There was nothing visible yet, only the clear feeling that something was hidden there, waiting to be seen. The danger, he remained silent, but closer. An employee tried to end the situation, saying they were wasting time. Laura almost gave in. Almost. It was then that the dog let out a low, short sound, different from the previous ones. It wasn't a loud warning, it was precision. The puppy, he didn't move, he just fixed his gaze on the same point, as if to say that this was the limit. A loyalty. There, it wasn't stubbornness, it was commitment. Child tears welled up in her eyes without understanding why. Something about that sound resonated with everyone. Laura asked for a small shovel, something simple just to check it out. The request generated murmurs, but it was fulfilled. The dog relaxed slightly upon seeing the tool, as if recognizing the intention. Child, he held his breath. The first movement revealed only damp earth. The second, a rigid object hidden beneath a thin layer of mud. It wasn't the answer yet, but it was proof that instinct. I was right. Thesilence. Their gazes broke apart in attentive glances. The detail was beginning to emerge. Laura carefully wiped away the mud, revealing a small children's bracelet trapped beneath the damp earth, the cold metal reflecting the flashlight's light. It wasn't old. It wasn't there by chance. Achilled, she recognized the shape and felt a shiver run down her spine, as if that object carried a story yet to be told. The dog took a step closer, sniffed the bracelet, and retreated, protecting her belly, as if confirming the clue and handing the next move over to the human. Silence, it became the focus of absolute attention. Doubt began to give way to urgency. Their gazes shifted. The security guard straightened his posture. A doctor approached, now interested. Laura sensed the heart. The dog struck faster, not out of triumph, but out of responsibility. If there was a child's object there, there was real risk. The dog kept its focus on the same perimeter, insistent, like a canine police dog who knows that the truth doesn't come all at once. Achilled, he realized that nobody was talking about animal control anymore. Love, the reason why that dog was being guided, was starting to make sense to everyone. Laura asked to carefully expand the search. The dog followed each step, stopping when someone moved away from the key point. The light rain returned, but it didn't erase the metallic smell. The bracelet led to a folded, soaked baby blanket, hidden between two parking spaces. There was no one there, only signs. Danger, it remained invisible but concrete. A loyalty, the dog's description was accurate, without exaggeration. Child, she felt silent tears streaming down her face, understanding that something serious was at stake. The final doubt arose. Could it be something lost, nothing more than that? Laura almost accepted this easy way out. Almost. The dog, exhausted, lay down for a moment, and then stood up again, firm, pointing with her eyes to the end of the corridor, where the lighting was failing. It was her last request. There was nothing left to prove, only something to decide. Trust. Now it was a choice. Laura nodded, feeling that ignoring it would be betraying that. Puppy, even though fragile, she had not given up on protecting. With reinforcements called in and the perimeter expanded, the investigation gained momentum. The atmosphere was one of quiet respect. The dog relaxed a little, as if handing over control after completing its mission. Child felt a strange hope born amidst fear. There was still no complete answer, but the truth was near. The detail that no one saw had opened the way, and everyone knew the revelation would be human, painful, and possible only because someone chose to listen. Instinct. The area at the end of the corridor was carefully cordoned off, without sirens, without a rush. The dim light revealed a half-open maintenance door, almost invisible to anyone not looking for it. The dog stopped there finally, as if that were the end of the road. It didn't move forward, it just looked. Laura felt the weight of the moment. There was no victory, only anticipation. Child, he realized that nobody was breathing properly. Silence, it became absolute, dense. The dog sat down slowly, protecting her belly, and waited. The message was clear. Now, the truth needed to be seen by humans. When the door opened, the smell changed immediately. It wasn't strong, but it was fresh. A human odor mixed with damp fabric. Laura took a step forward, sensing the heart it was hitting my ears. In the dark corner, behind boxes, there was a child's backpack leaning against the wall, partially covered by a blanket. There was no one there, yet killed. She felt her legs weaken. The dog didn't move, she just watched, like a K9 police dog which confirms the exact location before the final action. The danger eye was no longer in doubt. I was present. Inside the backpack, Laura found simple documents, a crumpled snack, and a hastily written note. Nothing dramatic, just short, trembling words, speaking of fear and of someone who needed to hide for a while. Child, she began to cry silently, feeling the gravity of the situation without fully understanding it. The dog stood up with effort and sniffed the backpack, then looked back down the hallway. It wasn't over yet. Loyalty. She wouldn't let you stop halfway. The only detail revealed was the entrance door. Laura called for help in a controlled voice. No alarm, no panic. The dog followed the movement with its eyes, remaining alert. An employee recalled a recent case, a young mother who had been admitted alone days before, frightened, avoiding contact, leaving too quickly. The connection emerged slowly, painfully. Trust. The decision regarding the female dog was made there without discussion. Child, he realized that the story wasn't about abandonment, but about protection. Desperate. The love what had guided that dog now made sense in every detail. When they decided to check the adjoining room, time seemed to slow down. The dog approached the closed door and lay down, exhausted but in a guarding position. She didn't bark. She didn't scratch. She was just there. Laura felt a lump in her throat. This wasn't aggression. It was absolute care. Child, he held his breath. The door opened slowly. The climax came not with noise, but with human recognition. Something there needed immediate help. And it was only found because someone trusted that person, Puppy, until the end. The adjoining room proved to be small, cold, lit by a tired lamp. On the floor, leaning against the wall, a mother. The young woman sat hugging herself, trying to warm herself with a thin jacket. Her face showed exhaustion and fear, not guilt. Beside her, Akub the human slept, curled up, breathing shallowly, feverish. Laura felt the silent impact of the discovery. The dog took 2 steps forward, stopped, and lay down again, protecting its belly, as if to say that that part of the journey was complete. Thessalence, it turned into restrained relief. The mother looked up startled when she saw people entering, but relaxed upon noticing their calm demeanor. She explained between pauses and tears he had fled a dangerous situation, penniless and without a destination. He had hidden there to protect his son until he could find help. The dog listened to everything motionless, like a Herod discreet. Laura realized that the danger, it wasn't a crime, but desperation. Those watching from the hallway understood, even without words, that the story was about survival, not about making mistakes. When Laura approached the puppy, she noticed clear signs of dehydration and early infection. Nothing irreversible, but urgent. The dog raised her head upon hearing the word urgent, as if recognizing the crucial moment. Laura's hand tightened as she thought about the time that had almost been lost. The mother held the nurse's hand tightly, shamelessly asking for help. Trust. What came there wasn't from promises, but from presence. Love. The words that had guided that dog now echoed among humans. The dog tried to get up to follow, but her body faltered for a moment. Laura noticed the effort and asked for a blanket. Feeling the warm fabric, the dog relaxed for the first time, breathing better. Loyalty, it no longer required constant vigilance. The main mission was underway. A kill from the hallway, he felt a hope gentle, like a discreet light after the storm. There was no applause, only quick decisions, steady hands, and the silent recognition that everything could have been different. While the team escorted mother and puppy for treatment, the dog remained motionless, observing, eyes attentive, posture calm. There was no triumph in her gaze, only temporary peace. Laura knelt beside her, gently touching her neck. "You were right," she murmured, unsure if she was talking to herself. The dog closed her eyes for a second. The climax didn't need grand words. It was human, silent, and possible because someone chose to listen, instinct, until the end. As her mother was led inside, the dog tried to follow each step with her eyes until the door closed. Her tired body gave way, and she lay on her side for a few seconds, breathing deeply. Laura then noticed a detail that had previously gone unnoticed. The excessive exertion wasn't just from the pregnancy, but from hours of walking under the rug. Storm, supported only by faith that someone would listen. Achilled, he watched in silence, understanding that the danger was not visible but real. The silence. Now there was respect, not tension. Laura called for veterinary support from the hospital itself. There was no excessive haste, just care. Upon examining the dog, they confirmed that labor was imminent and that the strain could have been fatal if they had waited any longer. The dog remained calm, accepting the touch as if she could finally trust. Love. There, it wasn't explosive emotion, it was a conscious choice, loyalty. What had brought her there was now turning into surrender. Child. She felt tears welling up, not from fear, but from profound relief. While preparing a heated room, Laura realized something simple yet crucial. If the dog had sought shelter earlier, perhaps no one would have noticed the mother hiding. Destination. It wasn't in grand gestures, but in the overlooked detail. The dog didn't save with force, she saved with direction. Laura's hand tightened its grip when she understood this. Puppy, he didn't choose the easy way out. He chose the right one. The climax ended there, without applause, only with the silent certainty that the decision made a difference. The dog was placed on a clean blanket and carefully given water. She breathed better, her eyes alert but serene. Laura placed her hand on her chest, feeling its steady rhythm, trust it was complete. Chilled, he approached slowly and touched the blanket with his fingertips, as if recognizing a hero. No need for a name. There was no noise, no music, just people doing what needed to be done at the right time because someone listened to their instinct. Outside, the rain had stopped. The hospital was resuming its routine, but something had changed. The dog closed her eyes for a moment, exhausted, finally in peace provisional. The detail that no one saw at the beginning was now clear to everyone. It wasn't an isolated plea for help. It was a chain of protection. One life guiding other lives towards the right light. And this only happened because someone chose to trust in that one, Puppy, when there was still no evidence. The medical team acted with calm precision, without fanfare, as if care were a natural part of that place. The mother received immediate care, and the baby was warmed, monitored, enveloped in firm hands and calm voices. Laura watched, feeling the heart slowed down for the first time in hours. The dog stayed close, lying on the blanket, eyes alert, breathing better. The silence now, it was functional, full of focus. Ackles realized the danger had retreated, replaced by a hope concrete. Nothing seemed extraordinary, and precisely for that reason, everything was profoundly human. With the baby stabilized, the mother let it slip. Tears, the dog's voices were restrained, their thanks uttered in short, still trembling phrases. There was no drama, just simple gratitude. Laura explained the next steps, keeping her voice steady. The dog lifted its head when it heard the whimpering cease and relaxed its shoulders, as if an old weight had been lifted. Loyalty. What had brought her there was now turning into well-deserved rest. Child, he observed the scene attentively, understanding that the love-it can also be quiet and effective, without making exaggerated promises. The veterinarian confirmed that the dog's delivery would be safely assisted right there. The news brought collective relief. Laura smiled for the first time. The dog accepted warm water, licked her lips, and closed her eyes for precious seconds. Puppy. He wasn't seeking applause. He was seeking peace. A child. She felt the urge to say something, but remained silent, respecting the moment. The hospital continued at its own pace, but there was a feeling that something had been fixed, like a belated appointment finally found. Hours later, the first subtle signs of labor appeared. The dog remained calm, guided by instinct which had already brought her so far. Laura watched carefully, ensuring her comfort. When the first cub he was born, small and strong, and the atmosphere filled with a restrained relief. There was no celebration, only deep breaths. Trust. The process was confirmed. Ackles, she smiled without realizing it, sensing that this beginning was the result of choices made at the right time. On the other side, the mother and baby rested safely. The danger was behind them, replaced by simple plans, recovery, shelter, a new beginning. Laura's eyes met the mother's and the dog's, understanding the invisible connection between their lives. Loyalty, it had no species. A hope. Now it was concrete, supported by actions. The hospital resumed its routine, but for those who lived through that moment, the consequence was clear. Listening to your instincts can save more than one life. As the hours passed, the hospital returned to its usual sounds, hurried footsteps and low voices, but there was a new layer of care in the air. The dog remained warm, following every movement around her with attentive eyes, although her body longed for rest. Laura adjusted the blanket and noticed how her breathing was more regular. Puppy. There was no need to keep watch anymore. The main mission was accomplished. Ackles, seated nearby, observed the puppy's newborns with respectful curiosity, sensing that something had changed inside her as well. The mother received reassuring news about the baby, and between tears with relief, she recounted how she had followed that dog in the rain without understanding why. She said that when all seemed lost, she felt she wasn't. Alone, Laura listened in silence, realizing how small gestures create unexpected paths. Loyalty. The dog had crossed invisible barriers, connecting destinies. Love. There, it wasn't a promise of an immediate happy ending, but a real chance to continue. Child, he understood that protection doesn't always come from whom we expect it to. The hospital contacted social services to provide temporary shelter for the mother and baby. There were no judgments, only practical solutions. The exhausted dog slept soundly among the puppies. Finally in peace, Laura watched that simple scene and felt the heart to heat up. It wasn't a miracle, inexplicable, but the result of making the right choices at the right time. A hope now. It had concrete form. Clean beds, hot food, feasible plans for the next day. Early in the morning, the rain stopped completely, leaving the ground washed clean, almost new. She was taken home by her mother, but before leaving, she said goodbye to the dog with a shy wave. Laura perceived in that gesture a seed planted. The dog opened its eyes for a moment, recognized the movement, and went back to rest. It no longer needed to prove anything. Instinct, he had already done his job. The silence now was one of well-deserved rest, not tension. Laura's colleagues whispered about the unusual night, each reflecting in their own way. Some admitted they had almost ignored the signs. Others recalled times when they had relied too much on routine. The consequence was not guilt, but learning. Trust in that puppy. He had taught something simple and powerful. Attention saves time, lives, and paths. The story didn't end there, but continued, lighter, because someone chose to listen when there was still doubt. At dawn, the soft light streamed through the hospital windows and landed on the blanket where the dog rested. Puppies. They moved slowly, seeking warmth, and she carefully sheltered them, even though she was tired. Laura observed that simple scene and felt a rare calm. Puppy, he didn't seem aware of what he had done. He had simply followed the instinct. A loyalty, what had brought her there now, translated into silent protection. Child once home, he would take with him the image of a hero who didn't need to speak to save. The mother returned later, now with clean clothes and a more composed demeanor. She thanked her briefly, looking at the dog as one who acknowledges an immeasurable debt. There were no grand promises, only the certainty that this help had changed the course of her life. Laura felt the heart warming up upon realizing that the hope it had taken concrete form. The dog raised her head, acknowledged the presence, and resumed tending to the puppy's scam, as if everything were exactly where it should be. The following days brought practical decisions: responsible adoption, veterinary care, and ongoing social support for the mother and puppy. Nothing happened too quickly. Each step was taken carefully. The dog remained calm, accepting touch, demonstrating trustful. The hospital continued its routine, but that story circulated in whispers, reminding everyone that the danger it doesn't always make a grand entrance. Sometimes it hides behind what seems like just a silent cry for help. Laura returned to her normal work, but something within her had changed. She began to observe more, to listen more attentively. The memory of the rain, of silence, the dog's fixed gaze remained alive, not as a burden but as a guide, a loyalty. That puppy, it had shown that trust is not weakness, it is applied courage. Child somewhere in the city, perhaps someone would repeat this lesson without realizing it, in small gestures of care. On that clear morning, the dog closed her eyes for a longer moment, the puppies safe all around. There was no more urgency, just peace. The storm had passed. What remained was the certainty that silent choices can change entire destinies, and it all began when someone decided to listen to instinct which seemed too small to import. She didn't see anyone to blame. He saw someone in need of help. Sometimes heroes don't speak, protect in silence. If this story touched you, leave a comment. Duckling, leave a comment below.